Hello, everyone. Welcome to Phone Photography 101. My name is Ben Thompson, and I'm going to be hosting this session today. I have a very amazing moderator named Laura, who will be in our comment section or our Q&A section, and she will be responding to you guys with anything, any questions that she can answer herself, or if there's a question about photography that she can't answer, we will be having a Q&A session later in the middle of my presentation, as well as at the end of my presentation for me to be able to answer all of your questions. So I will give this a little bit for everyone to join, and then I'll start in about 2 minutes. So how is everyone doing? Let's see. This is my first ever time using Zoom. So is everyone seeing this all right? Let's see. I am unable to see the questions. So I think we are about ready to begin. Perfect. All right. So let's minimize that. All right. Let's see. So today's presentation is going to be on Phone Photography 101, and it's by me. So first, let's start off with my intro. So who am I? So my name is Ben Thompson. I'm an Eagle Scout from the United States. I'm a professional photographer, and I am a social media volunteer at the World Organization for the Scouting Movement. I also was a part of the social media team at the last World Scout Jamboree at Summit Betchel Reserve down in West Virginia last summer. So that was a lot of fun, and I got a lot of experience from it. So I'm going to be sharing with you some of that experience as well as my photography experience outside of it. So let's start off with some of my favorite photos that I've ever taken. So here are some from the World Scout Jamboree. You might have seen this on our social media, and there are just so many options when it comes to photography. So from taking pictures of people to taking pictures of patches, there are so many different things that we have that we can take photos of. So this presentation is going to be how best to improve your photography with your phone, and as well as anything that you can use for your phone can also be then transitioned to if you have a camera. So that's really cool. And phone photography is a really cool thing because then you're able to, a lot of people think that you need a camera in order to do everything, but in reality, your phone takes amazing pictures, especially nowadays with all the different types of phones out there. There are some great cameras on it. Wait, oh no. Oh, there we go. All right. So let's go to the rules of photography. So there's a couple key rules. They're called rules because generally professional photographers will always be using these when we're creating images. However, there are some times where you break the rules and go outside of the standard norm for photography and get to change things up. So the first rule I would like to go over is the rule of thirds. So you can see right here, let's see. You can see I have 3 photos right here. The one on the far left is practicing the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is where when you can go into the cropping feature and line up the lines that are going horizontal and the lines that are going vertical, and they intersect each other at a certain point, or 4 points. So when it comes to the rule of thirds, what you want to always do is put the most interesting part of the photo in the one of those intersections, or lining it up perfectly between those two intersections. So you can see the Disney character on the left. I took a photo and I made sure to line up their eye in one of the intersections. And that is because our eyes look left to right, then up to down when we're viewing a photo. And so when we're transitioning to going side to side and up and down, what our eyes will actually do is we will focus on the one of those 4 points. So if you put the eye of whoever you're photographing, whether it's a character like in this photo or a person, that will draw the viewer in. Then next one over is Darth Vader. So I put Darth Vader in between the horizontal the horizontal lines, and he is not on the points, but he's in between them, and there's a really nice line going across his chin, which leads just to a very symmetrical photo. And over to the right, at the start, you can see that I was trying to get Darth Vader in the bracketing of the rule of thirds, but I didn't. So afterwards, you can edit it so he lines up, and his almost his middle of his body is all the way down that horizontal line. So that's just a simple way. Now, there's a lot of times where I found as a photographer, I'm actually not using the rule of thirds because I have another idea. So you don't have to use the rule of thirds all the time, but when it comes to more professional photography, it just tends to create a lot better of an image. So the next key concept we want to go over is leading lines. So leading lines is the concept of your eyes will look at a photo and it will try to create shapes out of the photo. So you can see on the left of the screen, there is I created a really great image. This is one of my favorite images, but it's of a cavern and there's water. So what I did was I got really low to the water and I used the left side of the cavern where it's blue, and it's pointing towards deeper into the cavern. And since I was low to the ground, you can really see the where the water stops and the rock starts up, going upwards. And that has shown it creates symmetry, and it allows for just the image to look a lot cleaner, and also paints a better story for the photo. And on the right, I took a picture of a road. So when it comes to photography, you have to be very careful because that could be a very dangerous situation if you're in the middle of the road. So I had somebody actually watching up the street behind me to make sure there was no cars coming. But I got in the direct center of the road, so then you can see both sides of the roads coming together and leading up towards the hill. And so to your eye, it looks very pleasing. And it's just, especially when it comes to one of the 3 concepts that I'm going over, leading lines can create amazing photos. Next thing I want to go over is framing. So framing is the basic concept of trying to either add more elements into your photo without taking away from what you're actually wanting to show. So on the left of your screen, you can see a dolphin. So the framing in that photo is that the green plants that are below it. So without those green plants, it would have still been a great photo, but you wouldn't know where I took it. I could have taken it in the middle of the ocean, or I could be taking it at a zoo. But with that, the green there, that shows to the viewer that it was really close to shore, because obviously there aren't plants in the middle of the ocean. And from the photo to the right is a photo that I took of myself through the glasses of actually my father. And so at first you're looking at me in the lens, but then you notice the fact that once you start scanning the image around towards the sides of the frame, you see that's actually a person, and that's sunglasses that I'm shooting at. So a big part of framing is getting creative, walking around. If you're trying to take a picture of, let's say, a building, looking around and finding an interesting angle that you can take a picture of that building from, and also seeing if there's things around it that you can include in your image to give a better understanding of where you are and what's important for the subject that you're shooting, whether it's a building or it's a person. So to your left, again, I was at Disney and I took a picture of the castle, and I wanted to kind of make it look as if you're going from just a jungle to see a castle. And I used a lot of these palm trees and the other trees to kind of get away from it being an amusement park that just has a lot of cement and artificial things, and made it as natural as I can. And then if you look to the right, it's the same castle, but then I used a hole in the railing of a two-story building that I was in, and shot through that to give it a cool angle and allow you guys to look in and see the castle without looking around as much in the front of the image. So next, I would like to go over editing photos, because I feel that a lot of us can take really great photos, but some of the special aspects of the photos are lost because we over edit our photos. So I'm going to actually teach you some editing techniques that I use as a professional photographer, so then you guys can transfer that to the photos you take on your phone. So if you guys have a phone around, I highly recommend you going over to the App Store on it. It's both on Android and on iOS. It's called Snapseed. And this is a great editing app because it's free, and it has a lot of features that are the same as the features on the a lot more professional grade software that I use for my professional photography on my computer, and it's can fit right into your pocket. So I'm going to be opening this session up for a couple of questions to give you guys all time to download that app before I show you around that app in order to help you better improve your editing. So how this is going to work is my co-host Laura will be asking the questions that you put in the Q&A section, and I will be answering them.
Yes, thank you, Ben. We have several questions, a lot, but let's start something related to your presentation on about you. We have a question asking what is an Eagle Scout, and also what made you to start photography?
So those are both great questions. So an Eagle Scout is the highest rank that you can get in the Boy Scouts of America, or now called Scouts BSA. From the start of my scouting career till when I got Eagle Scout was about 10 years. So it's a very big achievement in the Scouts BSA. So it's in the United States, that's a big honor to have. And what got me into photography was actually I got a little camera when I was just a kid, and I would just take photos just walking around and on trips that my family went on. And then I kind of fell out of taking photos, and then when I was around 14 years old, I went on a school trip, and I brought my family's camera. And ever since that, I've been taking photos pretty much every week. So that was over 5 years ago. So I've been taking photos for quite a while.
Thank you, Ben. We have another one that I think it's related to your explanation. What's the golden radio?
Can you restate state that question?
What is the golden radio? Is that something you mentioned?
The golden...
Oh. Maybe we can ask teacher to restate the question, and we can have it later. We have another one. Yeah. How to take a good photo when some scouts are doing something and they are in mood?
So that's a great, so if I heard that correctly, how can you take a good picture when there's a lot of movement?
Yes.
Is that correct? So that's a great question. That's one of the hardest things to do in photography, because if you think about it, when the camera takes a picture, what is actually happening is the camera is opening and closing. So the faster that happens, it slows everything down. So then the motion stops. But when that happens, the faster that happens, the less light gets in. So the best way to try to get the best photos without as much blur when it comes to taking it with phones is trying to get as much light surrounding the people who are doing the activity that you want to take photos of, because the more light that's in the picture will allow your camera to take a photo faster, which will stop the blur from happening.
Thank you. Can you repeat the Snapseed, because we have a question on what is Snapseed? Maybe you can repeat the.
So that's a great question. So Snapseed is a app that you can download on a smartphone to edit your photos. And in just a second, I'm actually going to be going onto my phone, and I'm going to share my phone screen, and we're going to go through the app once everyone has it downloaded, and go through how to use that app to make your photos look better.
Thank you. And we have another that is related. Is this the only what app that you can use? Do you know on other apps that are nice to use?
That's a great question. So this is definitely not the only app that you can use for editing your photos. You can use anything from Instagram has a lot of features when it comes to editing your photos. There is another one called Darkroom, and I don't know if that's on Android, but that's on iPhones. And I just have found that Snapseed has worked for the best for me, and especially when I was younger, this is the app I used the most for photo editing.
Thank you. We have a very interesting, maybe you want to tell us about what was the most uncommon situation you've taken photos?
The most uncommon situation that that's a great, that's honestly an amazing question.
Or a fun photo you take, or particular?
I have to say is definitely when I'm traveling, and I am if like, let's say I'm going to a city, and when I'm in a car or a train, thinking of an idea that just pops into my head, like I remember I was going to New York City because I live quite close to there. And I was on the train and I took a photo of my train tickets. And that was very kind of out of the blue for me, or just uncommon for me, because usually the tickets aren't always the best. Like not the most interesting thing to take a photo of, but they ended up making for a really cool picture. So that's probably the most unusual thing I've taken a photo of.
Okay, thank you. And one last, if we can.
Yep.
Is photography something you can learn, or the talent has the main impact?
That's an amazing question. So it is something you can definitely learn. And it might look very hard to start photography, but once you start getting into it, you will see yourself getting better just the more photos you take. So it's definitely not something like the photos you saw before. That's after shooting hundreds of thousands of photos. I've taken probably over 100,000 photos in the past 5 years. So the reason why my photos look that way is because I've done a lot of practicing when it comes to taking them.
That's totally true. Yes.
So let's see. I need to get up. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to. It's not allowing. Oh, there we go. All right. So I'm going to switch over to my phone now. All right. So can you guys see my phone?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So I'm going to go into the app. When you normally go into the app without having a photo already in it, there will be around here, there will be a plus icon, and then you tap on that and go to the photo that you want to edit, and will go into your camera's your camera roll, which has all your photos in it. So I'll give everyone a couple of seconds to find a photo that they want to edit. And the biggest thing when it comes to editing, especially in professional photography, is to not make the photo look too fake. There are a lot of features that really can take a photo that might have been very like not so good photo and can make it really cool. But if you go overboard, then an amazing photo that you took, if you put too much editing into it, then people are gonna not look as much at the amazing photo that you took and look at more how much editing you did to it. So the biggest thing we're gonna be talking about when it comes to this app is kind of finding a good balance between putting some editing in while keeping the photo kind of almost as it was before. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go to tools. And so there's a lot of tools when it that they give, and all these tools are in the more professional software that is used on computers for professional photography. But the first one we want to go into is the, what is it called? It is called Tune Image. And what this will allow us to do is to change pretty much all of the aspects of the photo to be able to make it look better. So the first setting is brightness. So that's how, obviously, how bright or dark the image is. So when it comes to making sure that the photo is the right brightness, what I actually do is I bring my the brightness on my phone down to like halfway, and then go in and see what the best brightness is, because if you are either too if your brightness is too dark on your phone or too bright on your phone, that might change the image and makes it either too bright for everyone else's phone or too dark. So going 50% to start will make sure that whatever brightness you add to it or take away from it will make it look better. So I like for this photo, I like adding 25% brightness. So it just brings out a little bit of the colors in the trees that are kind of towards me, without taking too much away from the sky. So the biggest thing you have to look for is, what are you trying to show in the photo? Because if I'm really trying to show the sky, what I need to make sure I'm doing is when I'm editing it, I want to bring out all of the features that I can in the sky, and also try to bring out all the features of everything else without taking away. So here's what it looks like before, and here's what I have now. So how you change the next one is, below the image, there's this gray space. I don't know if you can see this, my cursor, but this gray space, if you hold on it with your finger, and then, oh wait, sorry. If you drag upwards, you can change it. So next, sorry, I just did it. All right, so my brightness is at 25. Next is contrast. So what contrast is how dark, how far away the darks and the lights of the image are. So what that means is, you can see right here, towards the left side of the picture, the trees would be kind of the darkest part of the photo. And the up here where the sky is, that's obviously the brightest part of the photo. So when we're increasing the contrast, what that does is it will darken the darker parts and make the brighter parts brighter. So this can make the photo look more dramatic. So I kind of like, for this photo, a little, probably around 20 for this photo, but it might be different for you. So if you see, this is what it looks before, and this is what it looks now. So we actually got a little bit of the sky taken away from the past two ones. So later on, what we'll do is we'll add in some other things that will bring that sky back out. So that might happen with a photo where a couple of the settings take away from a part of your photo, but the other features will allow them to allow that photo to, sorry, let me restate that. So in some of the steps when you're editing, it might take away from a part of your photo, but the other steps will actually bring that part back in to make sure that it's the best it can be. So the next thing is saturation. This, whenever anyone asks me how to take better photos, I have to tell them to be careful with saturation. And what saturation is it will add or take away color from the image. So as you can see, if you look at this, this kind of almost looks fake at this point because there's so much color in it. So to me, if I were to just look at this photo right now, I would see, oh, wow, that's really blue. That doesn't look like it's natural. That's not what you want to do. You want to add a little bit of color to it without making people say that's too much color. So let's around 50. So here's what it looks before and adding that color in. And what that saturation does is if you look at the lower part where I took some grass, it's a lot greener than it was before. And the sky is a little bit more blue. So that's good. But sometimes what I like to do is put the saturation to -100 and make it black and white, or maybe actually take out some of the color but keep a little bit of it and go with what would be called a more muted photo, where there's less color but there's still some color in it. But for this photo, since I got a really nice color sky, I definitely want to keep it more positive when it comes to the saturation. So next is ambience. This is one of my favorite tools when it comes to editing my photos, because what it will do is it will definitely make the photo look a little bit more dramatic. So if you go too much, it looks fake, again, like the saturation. But if you go around 50% or 25%, you will see a big difference in the clouds, which is kind of what I was going for, is I want people to see those clouds and the shape of them. So I think that's about good. And now you can definitely see a lot more of the green trees that were close to me. And it brings out that color a little bit more. So let's now go from ambience to highlights. So what this part of the editing does is it can either the brightest part of the photo, it can either add more brightness to it, or you can actually take away brightness from the brightest part of the photo without making the darker part of the photo darker or lighter. So this is great if, let's say, you are taking a photo in a building and you're taking a photo of someone and they are in front of a window, and the window with the glare and the light coming into it might make the person look too bright on the back, but their face is dark. So you want to bring down the highlights because you want to show their face, but you don't want to make their face darker than it already is. So for this, I'm actually going to go minus because it's the sky is already pretty bright, and if it's too bright, it can lose some of the features of it. So I'm going to go down a little bit and see now how the clouds are brought out a little bit more. So here's what they look like before, and here's what it looks like now. Next is shadows. So that it's the opposite, where you can either make the shadows brighter or darker without changing the brighter part of the photo. So for this, honestly, for this photo, I'm not going to change it at all because I think that the shadows look fine in the photo. And sometimes that's perfectly fine when it comes to a photo where you don't use all the tools that are given to you, because sometimes the photo looks fine by itself. And then the last feature that I'm going to go over in this part is warmth. So what warmth does is either makes the image more orange or more blue. So this can help if you're taking a photo inside a room, because sometimes the lighting in the room will cause the photo to look a little weird when it comes to the color of people's skin. So for this photo, the warmth in it is pretty much what I wanted. So I'm not going to really change much of it, maybe make it a little warmer. So when it comes to this, there's a little bit of psychology that goes into it, in which if you add more orange to someone's face, people will more likely think that is actually the color of their face, versus if you make it more blue, they will think that's the lighting that is put onto their face. So you have to be careful when you're adding the warmth to the photo. If you're putting more orange into it, that can cause some problems when it comes to the skin color. So make sure that you're looking, if you're taking a picture of someone, to make sure that you're not making their the color of their skin look fake or not close to what it actually is. So once that is done, you press the check mark on the right hand side. So now this is what it looks before, and this is what my photo looks like now. And so let's go into tools, and let's see what we're doing with time. So we are actually going right on time. So the last thing I'm going to show you guys is this tool of structure and sharpening. So how you get to that is go up here to detail, which is the triangle. So what structure does is it can bring out kind of the edges of the different parts of your photo. So the tree branches, it will look for that part and make it more pronounced. So it will kind of cut out, for example, in this photo, it will cut out the clouds a little bit better. So you don't want to put too much of this because then it looks too dramatic. But sometimes for a photo, you want to add that part in. And then sharpening just makes, for the most part, it will make the photo look crisper, or kind of, it will give a sense of a higher quality image. But when it comes to sharpening, you don't want to over sharpen it or add too much of it, because what will happen is then it will pixelate, or it will start to lose quality, because you'll see each pixel in the image will start to look very different from the next pixel over. So it can look really grainy, and there might be actually grain spots that the image starts to have, which is not good. So for this, I'm going to add a little bit of sharpening to it, but that's pretty much it. And then when we're done with editing, you can try out the other tools at another time. But once you're done with that, what you can do is either save it as the original photo or save it as a copy. And my biggest suggestion as a professional photographer is always save it as a copy. And the reason for that is, then if, let's say, you show it to your friend or show it to somebody else and they say that looks too fake, if you didn't save a copy of it, so then you still have the original version, then you're going to have to try to unedit the edited photo versus starting over from scratch. So as a professional photographer, I always keep my original images and then make a copy of them to edit. So I will save a copy, and that's that for the editing portion of this video. So let's go back over. All right, so we are now back here. All right, so we are back onto the slide presentation. So let's move on to some of my tips. So my top 5 tips as a professional photographer for you guys and for your friends if you want to share this information. So the first tip I have for you guys is try different types of photography. So I've been very fortunate from in my career as a photographer to try a lot of these different types of photography out. So one of them is product photography. So I take images of different products for companies, and they have paid me in the past to do that, which is really cool because I get to have free stuff. So some of the time it's as simple as emailing or messaging the company and saying, hey, I'm a photographer and I want to take photos of your the products that you sell. And sometimes they will say yes, but most of the time they say no. But as you become a better and better photographer, that's definitely a way to make money as a photographer. But also it's really cool. You can, if you obviously are not paid, but you want to take, if you have, let's say, a really cool mug or a really cool thing that you like that you have, you can take pictures of it in interesting places. The next type of photography that a lot of people know is portrait photography. So this is actually a portrait that I did of my sister in New York City. What I found is this is actually one of the most amazing gifts that you can give someone, is to take a really amazing photo of them and give it to them. So a lot of my, the birthday presents I give to other people, or for gifts, I will give them a photo that I took of them to have, or a photo of something that they are very passionate about. So that's a great way to give something without having to spend like any money, because if you give them a photo from your phone, it's free. And it's one of the most amazing gifts to get, is an amazing photo. So that's if anything you take away from it is it's called giving the gift of photography. So if that's the one thing you take away from this, I would be really happy. The next one is landscape photography. So this was at the World Scout Jamboree, and obviously you can see that there are, I took a photo of the sunset. You can get just some amazing photos that way. There is miniature photography, which is taking something like this, or the rubber duck that you see in the photo, and putting it in an interesting spot. So this was when it was raining, and taking a photo of it to make it look larger than life. That goes, and that will go into another tip that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. This is another landscape photo, and so it's like sunsets. Those are amazing places to take photos, especially if you're on the water or you're out hiking. That's an amazing spot to take a photo. The second tip I have is angles, angles, angles. So one thing that can increase your level of photography a lot is by looking around with your phone and going up and trying to get a photo up high or down low, and just seeing what it looks like when you do that, or going left or right of where you want to take the photo of, and seeing how that changes the image. So for the photo on your right, I got really low to the water fountain. That made everything around it look a lot larger, which is really cool. And I got down for the photo on your left. I got down and actually had my camera on the ground shooting upwards to make the Jasmine, in this case, look just a lot more like normal size because of how she was sitting. The third thing I recommend is keep on taking photos. So that kind of gets back to the question that was asked in the beginning, where my photos look this way is because I've been taking photos professionally for 5 years. So obviously, and sometimes you can get great photos just out of luck, but a lot of it is learned, and just keep on taking photos, because each photo you take is one photo closer to you being a better photographer, even if it's with just a phone camera. Then that brings me into my next thing, which is equipment doesn't matter. So what I mean by this is I have professional cameras that I use because that's what I do for my job. But don't think you need one of these to take an amazing photo. This photo is one of my favorite photos I ever took. This was 4 years ago, and that was I took that photo from my phone, and I actually have that framed and hung up in one of the rooms in my flat. So it really doesn't matter if you have a phone or an old camera from your family, or an old camera you bought, or a really nice camera. It's about the idea you have and how you capture that idea. So a lot of photography now is on your phone, which is why I didn't really talk about much with the little cameras that are the professional cameras I have, is because a lot of the times you won't have a camera with you. And so having a phone in your pocket that can take amazing pictures is great. And the last thing is, the only opinion that matters in photography truly is yours. And that's because at the end of the day, you'll be able to look back at all your photos for a lot longer than anyone else can, because they mean something to you. So if there's a photo that you love, maybe no one else cares about, that's what really matters, is something that can bring joy to yourself, but also sometimes, especially when it comes to photos that are really great, a lot of other people will enjoy it, but don't get discouraged if somebody else doesn't like your image, because it's all subjective, because photography is art. So sometimes you might like a photo and somebody might not. So that's the last tip I really have. So we are running up against time, but we are going to actually do a little Slido, which I will actually have my friend Laura. She will share her screen, and then you guys can join it. And what we're going to actually do is we're going to do 2 word walls. So you guys are going to be able to submit words to add to them, and we'll see what everyone puts. And a really cool graphic. So if you guys either, you can either use your phone, or you can also use, let's see.
Can you see the screen?
I can, yes. So you can either use the left side if you're going on your computer, or if you have your phone with you, you can actually pull up the camera feature on your phone and take a picture of that QR code and go immediately to the right site, which is really cool. So we'll give everyone a couple of seconds to get to that point.
Do you want me to show the first one?
Yes, I think that would be great. So the first thing we want to know is, where are you guys all from? What countries are you from? So I'm gonna add it in too.
Oh, wow, look at that. Many countries.
Oh, wow.
Thank you everyone for joining. We have people from all over the world.
Wow, that's amazing. So if you guys look at the word wall, the larger the name is, that means the more people that are from that country. So there's a lot of people from Lebanon, Australia, Colombia, and there's a couple people from, a lot of people from the United States or the USA. Wow. So I'm going to take a picture of that. Let's see. That's really cool.
Should we go with the next one?
Yeah, 1 second. Let's try that again. Yeah, so that's really cool, guys. I'm really excited to see that a lot of people responded, and they're from a lot of different countries. So let's go over to the next one. So what is your favorite thing to photograph? Sunsets. I would have to say, personally, my favorite thing to take pictures of are people. Let's see. Nature. Yes, definitely nature is a great thing to take photos of.
Hey, Ben, we had a question from some of our friends asking, how does it impact the weather of the place where you take the picture? And maybe you can relate it here to the places they like to take photos.
So that's a great question, because obviously we can't always get warm, sunny days. So when it comes to taking photos, the best thing I can say is go with the flow of whatever the weather is. So it might change what you're taking photos of if it's different weather. So let's say it's snowing and it's really cold. I'm going to be taking a lot more photos of the snow than I would be of the trees. When it comes to really doing photography, is just think creatively, and that will open up your mind to anything that you can take photos of. And maybe it's not something that you normally take a photo of, but if you see something that, hey, that might be interesting, if you take a photo of it in a certain way, you can really get some really cool photos, even if it's raining out, or if it's snowing out, or it's cold out and there's little sun. So I'm going to take a photo of that. Perfect. That's really cool, guys. A lot of you guys were a part of that, which was great. Let's share my screen again. And the last thing we have for you guys is the Q&A portion. So we have definitely a couple minutes to answer any of your questions, but if you guys have no questions or you don't want to stick around, there is JOTI Live, which is going to be happening in a couple of minutes, which I highly recommend checking out, and that can be accessed either from the JOTI website or on Facebook. But I'll be around for a couple more minutes to answer all the questions you guys have. And if you have a question that you haven't yet asked, by all means, stick around and ask it.
Okay, so we have tons of questions, and let me tell you, we don't have that much time, but let me see some of them. Oh my gosh. A lot of people are asking on your social media accounts, and they're asking if there's a place where they can see some of your pictures published, if you want to share that with.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you guys, I have a Instagram account dedicated purely to my photography, which is BK then THOMP with an underscore and then the word photography. So I'll write that out.
Yes.
All right, let's.
A lot of people there are saying great tips, thank you so much. They really enjoyed the app. They were very engaged in that, and they're asking if they can download it on iPad. Do you know about that?
So yes, you should be able to download it on iPad. I'm not sure about that. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe you should be able to use it on the iPad. So here is my Instagram for my photography. I just started it up. I had a older account that I actually ended up, even though I had a lot of followers on it, I started losing interest in photography just because I was too worried about the amount of followers. So I restarted it because I wanted to focus more on the actual photos that I was taking and less on the people that were seeing my photos. So that's a cool little thing to think about, is the art of photography is less about what the other people think and more about the art that you're creating.
Okay. There was an interesting question on how is the best way to position your phone in your hands, like how to. Can you demonstrate?
That's a great
that?
Yep. So for me, I usually have my middle finger and my ring finger on the back of the phone, and then I use my pinky finger and my index finger on the sides of the phone. So then it's really stable. Then I grip my phone with my index finger, my middle finger, and my thumb on this hand that's closest to the lenses, and then I can use my thumb from this hand to press the button to take the photo.
Awesome.
That's a great question, though.
Yes. Let's see. Some perfect. What would be your one tip that you will give to those amateur photographers or those beginners that they want to start taking pictures of scouts or maybe outside scouting? What would be one tip that you will give them?
That's a great question. My biggest tip is, it is scary when it comes to seeing there's so many amazing photographers, so it's sometimes scary to start taking photos. And my biggest tip for you guys is definitely understand the fact that you will get better as time goes on. So sometimes maybe at the start, your photos are probably not going to look like the professional photographers' photos, but that doesn't really matter, because eventually you'll, through enough photos that you've taken, you'll start to get better and create a lot better images. So just keep on shooting no matter what, because you'll start to get better by doing that. And also, find a couple of photographers that you really enjoy looking at their images, and really look at their images and see what they did to take that photo, and see the techniques they used for editing. And that's a great way. So looking up on YouTube photography channels, or looking up on Instagram or Facebook a couple of professional photographers and seeing what they do, and then start trying to replicate a couple of the things that they do to make your photos better.
That's an awesome tip. Thank you, Ben, so much. They're asking if you can please hold up again the page where you showed your Instagram.
Yeah, actually, let me see. I can.
Can
you see my? Can you see my screen?
Yes. Let me. There.
Let me make sure that I'm sharing the right Instagram. Sometimes I forget my own username. Yeah.
There you go. They are encouraging among themselves to follow you. 188 followers, and they are
Wow.
saying need to follow. And they are asking for more tutorials from you. So we will for sure ask you to come back with more tips on photography.
For sure. And if you guys have a lot of questions other than this, you can always ask my account, but if to make sure that we follow safe from harm, make sure that you always have another adult or another scout in it. So then there's always 2 scouts or 2 adults all looking at the message to make sure that we're staying safe with safe from harm.
Totally. Maybe last 2 questions that I found very interesting is one, how do you make people feel comfortable while taking pictures to them? What would you suggest?
Oh, that is honestly one of the most amazing questions. It is really hard when it comes to trying to get somebody to get in the right position. My biggest tip for that is letting them know, hey, this is gonna feel awkward, and I understand it's awkward. So the biggest thing is letting them know, just pretend that I don't have a camera. or pretend I'm not taking a photo of you, and just act natural, because the more natural they feel, the more natural they will look. So what I will do is I will put my phone or my camera away, and I sometimes will try to figure out if, like, I want somebody to pose. I will actually have them put, I will have myself, I will go and feel out what I want them to do, so then I can better instruct them in how to replicate what I want them to do. So I sometimes will get down and lay down and find the right position for somebody to replicate what I want them to do. So that's a great question. So sometimes acting it out yourself, or and also letting them know, hey, it is awkward, and just you have to embrace a little bit of the awkwardness when it comes to it.
And one last, that was a great tip. Thank you so much and advice. One last question, Ben. What would you suggest our participants to do with their photographies during this time, and how can they contribute to the situation with through photography?
That's such an amazing question, and that's a huge thing, especially with the time that we're in right now, where we are kind of shut out from the rest of the world. It's a great opportunity for us to look back, not only start creating new photos, but looking back at the photos we've taken over the years, and reaching out to your friends and your family that are in the photos, and sharing those photos of you and them, and keeping connected with the people that really that you care about, and sharing a little piece of joy of a memory you had with them.
Yes.
And as well as, depends on whether or not you're allowed to go outside. It depends on where you're living, on what the health officials in your country or your town and city say. But if you're allowed to get out, especially, it's a really important thing is to keep active, especially during these times, because that has just been proven with our bodies. The more active you are in making sure that you're staying active will actually keep the blood flowing around your body, which will help your brain to stay happier. So getting out if you can and taking photos is a great way to get some exercise and get some activity, because you don't necessarily need people to take photos. You can take photos of anything. And even if it's walking around your house and taking photos of things in your house, you can do that and just let your creativity really roam. And what amazing thing about photography is that you, especially with photography, you, by sharing your photography, that's why I have my Instagram, is by sharing it, it can bring joy to people's faces. That's my favorite part about photography, is that people can see my photos and they just have a moment of joy where they see something really cool and they're really excited about it. So definitely trying to find something that will make other people smile, or something positive that you can take a photo of, is gonna definitely just help everyone around you stay more positive, even even during these times where it's not easy to find positive things that are going on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have this constant question, maybe you can address very quickly, but she's asking, can you take light trails photo with your phone? If yes, how?
So can you restate that question?
Can you take light trails photos with your phone?
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. So I do know, so what light trail photos are, let me see if I have one. So what light trail photos are is when you do what's called a long exposure or have the camera open for a while, it's really hard to do it on the phone. I'm pretty sure if you look online, there are some apps that should allow you to do that. But definitely that's one of the things where an actual camera might be needed in order to do that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you guys were all able to join. And if you guys have any more questions, again, you can definitely follow me on that account and ask me questions, but make sure that you follow the safe from harm guidelines, making sure that you have other people in the chat, or I won't be able to respond back to you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night, and thanks everyone for joining, and stay around.
Yeah.
We will continue.
Thank you guys for all participating, and this is a great event. So keep on scouting and keep taking photos. Bye-bye, everyone. And